Today we're going to explore a new opening in the Vatican, an ancient necropolis that you've never seen before, but now it's open to the public on a daily basis. We're going to be able to take a look at the grand opening, these extraordinary tombs of the poor and of the middle class, people tied directly to the emperor. It's all in the Vatican, and it's all new. Let's explore this incredible necropolis of Vatican City.
All right, we're right here outside the Vatican Walls. There's a door right behind me, and this is the entrance to a car park. It's also the entrance to a very important excavation of the necropolis along the Via Triumphalis. It's now finally open to the public. It's now finally able to be visited by everybody, no longer just specialists. And they've made the facilitation extraordinary because you enter that gate, walk 80 meters, and you're transported back in time. You're going back to the middle of the 1st century AD forward for a number of centuries, and you will see incredibly well-preserved burials, both cremation and inhumation. The presentation is top, and this is something that you can see tied to the Vatican Museums, or you can see as a separate visit. I highly recommend it.
Let's orient ourselves in Vatican City. You have the Scavi, the famous necropolis underneath St. Peter's, and to the right, we have that new section, the necropolis along the ancient Via Triumphalis that once led to Veii. And it's here, during the construction in the 1950s of a car park, that you have this excavation taking place, and the excavations after the 50s continued in the early 2000s. And we have some fascinating reconstructions of what those tombs actually look like that were created on a slope of Mons Vaticanus. And the thing is, there are a number of landslides ultimately lead to the construction of tomb upon tomb over several centuries. And this is the end result, a very complex site, but one that is very accessible and very visible. You can see all the layers of that history.
It's extraordinary to think that with the creation of a car park, the Santa Rosa car park, you have this discovery. And actually, it makes sense, because what was Mons Vaticanus? We know that there was the circus of Nero, we know there was the circus of Caligula, that's abandoned, and then ultimately, archaeologically, in other parts of the hill, we have burials, including, of course, the famous burials underneath St. Peter's Church. This was a new discovery. This was something truly a revelation. And what we have here is preserved the slope of Mons Vaticanus. And on this slope, we have several phases, several deposits of tombs. And the tombs change over time. So we can walk along and we can look and we can see this kind of progression. You have early imperial burials, and then we progress into the 2nd century, and ultimately we're topping out in the 3rd century. And what you see when you come to the site is a dynamic, really well-organized museum on location. So you've got panels, you've got finds, you have many inscriptions and sarcophagi on display as you walk along these walkways. But then you also have down below the majority of tombs left where they were found, and you even can see conservators working. Now, I gotta tell you, I was quite privileged. Many years ago, over a decade, I was here seeing this incredible museum. But recently, a new entrance has been made through the walls of St. Peter's to accommodate tourists, to accommodate everyone to come and see this site for themselves. So in other words, without that facilitation, without that new entry point into this archaeological site, it would basically be impossible for people to come here and see this site. It was so complicated. In the past, it was a convoluted path to go from inside the Vatican Museums and then through the property to this car park. Now it's been facilitated, now it's immediate, now it's accessible to everybody.
Let's take a look at some of the extraordinary finds in this museum site. Here we have the remains of a small tomb. Here is Tiberius Netronius Venustus, commemorated. This small child who lived 4 years, 4 months, and 10 days. This is the lid of a cinerary jar, and it depicts a sleeping lanternarius. The lanternarius is a slave boy. You can see he's fallen asleep, and he's actually leaning on his small lantern. It was found under an amphora near the tomb of Alcimus, who was a slave of Nero. We have so many tombs and urns in pristine shape, many with the cremated remains still intact inside. And of course, we have on the slopes of the Vatican Hill the tombs of the deceased that were poor, buried underneath a roof tile, whose cremated remains were placed in amphorae. It truly gives you a window into the stratified society of ancient Rome. And right here we have identified an ostrinum, an actual place of the cremation of the remains of the deceased.
This is something that really gives a sense of the volume of burials that were in and around Rome. So we're near the Via Triumphalis, we're at Mons Vaticanus, and we are in the midst of what were documented as being hundreds of burials, but there would have been thousands along this slope, this chance finding within Vatican City for the construction of the Santa Rosa carpark. And now that it's accessible, you really see an enormous archaeological site. And you have so much information about the lives of the deceased. So many inscriptions, but then there are countless unnamed souls that were buried underneath a roof tile, that were buried in an amphora. You have mostly cremation in the mid-1st century AD, moving forward to the 2nd century, and then it becomes sarcophagi if you could afford it. And we have a great collection of marble sarcophagi for the deceased, moving into even the 3rd century. So by and large, this is what we call a pagan cemetery. This is where so many Romans were buried outside the walls. And today, this is so pristine as an archaeological site. You want to come here, you want to explore this on your own. You want to understand just how much death was a part of the lives of the ancient Romans. There's so much that goes into this preparation for a tomb, and then the annual traditional festivals where you remember the dead. For example, the Parentalia, where you come out to the sites of the deceased and remember them. We have adults, we have elderly people, we have infants. So everyone is being commemorated because the loss of life is something that's remembered within one's family. And it's, you can take a look at the site and you can say it's kind of disconcerting because you see so many skeletons of the deceased on display. This is a topic which I think people are much more in tune with, also with the famous mummified peoples of Egypt. What should be on display? What kind of conversations can we have? I think it's a conversation you can have when you come to this site. But I assure you, archaeologically, this excavation is superb. The documentation is excellent. The displays are excellent. The didactics, the panels, and so forth, the videos. It's really going to take you into this period of time, Imperial Roman times. You see everyone in the stratified society, how they were buried, rich and poor. And it's so often that the poor we neglect, the poor that we don't document. Here, they are documented.
I want to thank the Vatican Museums for the special invite on the occasion of the opening of this important archaeological site. Now it's for everyone. I'm happy to share more about the Vatican Museums and a lot of their other opportunities for visits. Join me in 2024 for a whole lot new adventures, for a lot more examination, exploration of Rome and throughout the Roman Empire.